Welcome to the selected ones. Dead guys tell no stories. And that is precisely why they wanted you to leave before your court date. Return to the surface. Let it sink in. Because what we're going to reveal isn't just treachery. It's a full-fledged, organized disappearance plot that failed because you refused to die. Let's speak about facts. Over % of psychological stress victims in long-term legal and family conflicts show PTSD symptoms, and more than half suffer in silence, isolated and gaslit as their opponents count. The days are like vultures circling a corpse. Allow me to ask you something. Why did they fill out the paperwork? Burn bridges, smear your reputation, and then become quiet, almost as if they were waiting for a funeral. No justice, no closure. Simply a coffin with your name on it. Spiritual, mental, or literal. You see, chosen one. They never wanted the truth to emerge in court. They wanted the court date to arrive and you not to show up because you'd be in a body bag, a mental facility, or so badly damaged. You could not spell your own name. But here you are, not only alive, but clear-eyed, healed, and striding in like a heavenly subpoena. Here's the hilarious part. They spent so much work into burying you, yet they overlooked one little thing. You are not soiling your seed. So brace up, because this is more than just a return. This is a cosmic cross-examination, and someone is going to regret wagering against a soul designed to revive. Let's get to it. Number 1, they did not file a case. They created a coffin. They did not only file a lawsuit against you, they excavated the grave. This was not about settling a conflict. It was a well-timed assault with one goal. Make certain you didn't live long enough to defend yourself. The documents, the dates, the charges. It was all designed to drain, break, and bury you before the court. Ever had the opportunity to hear your side? They did not anticipate a fair battle. They anticipated either silence, a collapse, or a death certificate. The case was not about justice. It was a coffin in disguise. Think about it. Why was the court date put so far back? Why are there so many delays, inexplicable communication gaps, and abrupt coldness from folks who formerly professed to care about you? They weren't stalling for time. They were purchasing it. Time for the stories to spread, the worry to consume you, and your reputation to rot in public before you even had the opportunity to speak. They thought you'd give up psychologically, emotionally, and even physically. It was never about who was correct. It was a question of who would remain standing. They bet on you not making it. They weaponized your trauma, your history, and your triggers. They understood what you had gone through, and they staked everything on you relapsing or succumbing under pressure. They assumed that if they attacked you hard enough and then vanished, you'd silently collapse and rescue them. The difficulty of confronting the truth. But here you are, still breathing, still fighting. That is what they did not calculate. They expected you to collapse. Instead, you examined the pattern. You became smarter, stronger, and clearer. And now, the day they believed would be your last is become their exposure. The courtroom is no longer their stage. It is yours. And now, the casket-like casing they fashioned is breaking beneath the weight of your survival. Number 2, your mental breakdown was part of their timetable. Your demise was well prepared. This did not happen at random. They anticipated your breakdown to unfold precisely. Silence. You separate yourself emotionally, socially, financially, and cognitively. They didn't just anticipate it. They rely on it. They were not concerned about the court date. It was the deadline at which they expected you to be too broken to answer. That was the aim. Not only did I want to win, but I also wanted to ensure that you did not show up. They timed everything in the hopes that you'd unravel gradually but steadily, that the tension would build until it seemed difficult to breathe, that you'd lose your appetite, sleep, friends, and even yourself. And while you were unraveling, they kept it cool. They remained silent, kept the paperwork going, and smiled in public, all while waiting to see how long the anguish would eat you alive. It didn't matter if they had a case. They were banking on the damage. The kind of emotional sabotage that does not need a judge since it makes you psychologically exhausted before you ever enter a courtroom. They did not desire justice. They wanted you out of the picture, off the map, and wiped from your own narrative. They felt that if they remained calm and patient, their own minds would take care of the rest. That is the part that hurts the most. They were more confident in your demise than in their own lives. They believed they knew you. They assumed the wounds you carried were still open. They assumed you didn't have the strength to make it to the battle. But you screwed up their math. You did not collapse. You changed. The strain did not crush you. It energized you. They're now sitting silently, watching you ascend with clarity, power, and an unexpected serenity. They were banking on a ghost. But now they must confront someone who has been through hell and emerged looking like justice. Number 3. Your perseverance destroyed a multi-person investment. There was more than one person wishing you would fall. There were other persons behind the scenes who were involved in your collapse, as if it were a collective project. They weren't just watching. They were actively pulling for your demise, devoting attention, time, and, in some instances, money to ensuring you didn't survive this legal storm. Some of them stayed back to avoid getting their hands dirty while discreetly fueling the flames. Others played their parts openly, believing that the audience would protect them. Regardless, they all had a same purpose: erase you before you can rise. Your ruin became a common dream. They circulated your name like a hidden money. They fabricated tales, exaggerated the reality, and turned your life into a lie. They could all agree that the court date was more than merely settling a quarrel. It became their finish line on the day they planned to commemorate your quiet. They had meetings about you, whispered talks, and left late-night messages. They planned what they would do after you were gone, emotionally devastated or entirely written off. What they didn't depend on was your survival. That jolted them more than anything. Your presence, breathing, healing, and continued standing wrecked the whole enterprise. It cost them credibility. It caused their tales to unravel. It made them seem dumb. You weren't meant to be strong enough to keep going. And now you've arrived at the day they said you'd never see. They are the ones that are panicking. Your survival forced them to accept that all of their hard work, energy, and investment had been in vain. You did not shatter the way they expected you to. You did not vanish. You did not crumble under the strain. Now they're the ones hiding. They avoided eye contact and scrambled to conceal their identity. Because when someone escapes something that was meant to destroy them, the focus changes. And it's no longer you who is under the scrutiny. It is them. Number 4. They didn't anticipate the soul having a resurrection setting. They investigated your vulnerabilities. Scientists, like analysts, dissected your background and devised a strategy based on what they believed you couldn't handle. They made notes on your trauma, noted your breakdowns, paid attention to who abandoned you, and concluded that all of this indicated you were eternally vulnerable. They saw your sorrow as a blueprint for your downfall. However, they failed to consider that the soul is not made up of nerves and memories. It is based on something deeper, something they cannot measure, control, or kill. They assumed that if your body was fatigued, your soul would be likewise. They saw you weeping and assumed you'd remain there. They saw you were silent and thought you were done. What they entirely overlooked was that certain silences are hallowed regions where souls replenish. What they mistook for weakness turned out to be the beginning of an unexpected resuscitation. Because a chosen one's internal death is never permanent. It is a stop, a sacred rebuilding. And when that soul recovers, it does not just return. It develops. That is what they failed to grasp. You weren't living by willpower. You were linked to something limitless. Your strength did not stem from ego or pride. It originated from the divine. From forefathers who wouldn't let you go. From a destiny that would not allow your narrative to finish. Like this. They assumed you were out of alternatives, but you had reserves they weren't aware of. Divine anger kept you standing. Sacred memory kept you anchored. And a fire in your DNA that has been raging for centuries. You did not only recuperate, you returned enhanced. And this is terrible for them because they are no longer dealing with the version of you they attempted to bury. That version perished. The one who showed up today, that is the revived one. The one who is not only alive, but completely awake. They have no clue how to stop this. Number 5. The court date marked their spiritual demise. This court date was not simply marked on a calendar. They believed that a spiritual deadline would benefit them. They set the clock not just for legal proceedings, but also for spiritual battle. Everything they sent you away: curses, evil eye, gossip, emotional sabotage, and manipulation. Everything has an expiry date. In their imaginations, everything would climax just before this day came. And by the time it arrived, you'd be too damaged, humiliated, or lost to show up. That was no coincidence. That was strategy. They established their objectives as a spiritual trap, thinking you would succumb to the weight of delay and melancholy. They mingled falsehoods, ritual bitterness, and belief. They promised themselves and others that by this day, you would be completed. Not just silenced in court, silenced in spirit, but they set a deadline. It backfired because, as time passed, power moved. What was supposed to weaken you instead empowered you. What was intended to isolate you drove you inside. Where you discovered fire, they had no idea you had it. The longer the delay, the more the illusion dissolved. Now the day has arrived, and instead of finding a dead ghost, they are greeted by someone who is fully awake, attentive, and prepared. But here's a twist. This court date does not spell your doom. It distinguishes theirs. The timetable they established has become a spiritual reversal. Everything they predicted is now coming back. The falsehoods, the manipulation, the energy that they created. It's returning to the sender in real time. You're no longer on trial. Yes, they are. And the irony? They are unable to challenge this spiritual verdict. There is no lawyer, no loophole, no rights powerful enough to undo what has already started. The court may be legitimate on paper, but it was always a spiritual adventure. They attempted to craft your conclusion, but instead exposed their own. Number 6. They didn't expect your quiet to be strategic. They interpreted your silence as amateurs. They assumed you were hiding, breaking down, or avoiding the strain. But you were not terrified. You were sharpening. You did not talk since you did not have anything to say yet. Not because you were helpless. While they spoke and typed their stories, you were watching every move, fib, and name that appeared where it didn't belong. Your quiet was not due to fear. It was a strategy. They're going to discover what happens when a quiet storm finally speaks. They never imagined that your silence was intentional. But there was someone behind the quiet, studying trends, accumulating receipts, and recalling facts. Nobody imagined you'd notice. You were keeping track of talks, counting betrayals, and determining who was on board and who was just pretending. You weren't just surviving. You were preparing your case spiritually, emotionally, and legally. They believed they had enough time to spin the tale any way they wanted. They assumed you would remain frozen. However, the stillness they perceived for weakness was really you downloading everything they expected you to miss. And now you're strolling back into the scene as if you read the whole script in the dark before returning with the red pen. You are not reacting. You are exact. You are not flustered. You are composed. You aren't throwing punches. You are providing receipts with timestamps and documentation. They mistook your delay for their own exposure preparation. They were comfortable because you did not yell, did not defend yourself in public, and let them to speak. But now that the court date has returned, so do you. And you are not the same person you were before this began. You're upgraded, focused, and deadly with facts. The version of you they believed they could quiet has gained the upper hand. And this is the hardest thing for them. You knew the whole time. You allowed them to bury themselves with their own words. Now all you have to do is show up and hit play. They never expected you to go this far. Not cognitively, emotionally, and certainly not spiritually complete. The system, the people, and the equipment that caused the mayhem all counted on one thing. That you would forget, that the trauma would leave you confused, that the manipulation would muddle your memory, and that the gaslighting would rob you of clarity. They didn't merely expect you to go. They were counting on you being too broken to ever put the parts together. But you did. And today, just being alive, conscious, and entire poses a danger to all they've achieved. You were meant to be bewildered, numb, and too traumatized to remember the specifics. They expected you to turn up, whether broken or not. They banked on psychological decline. They believed the weight of the past would crush you before the truth could be revealed. But you're thinking clearly, recalling vividly, and speaking with a calm that goes deeper than wrath. You didn't simply walk out of the fire. You carried the evidence. You do not need a dramatic tale. You do not need to perform. You don't even need to over-explain. Your presence contradicts every lie they taught you. Standing here, steady, entire, and sharper than ever, disrupts their illusion. You are proof that something happened, and that someone survived without becoming what they went through. That's not simply unusual. That is detrimental to the story. This is why they are unpleasant. Why are they so twitchy? Because you aren't sharing your narrative in chunks. You're entering as the whole archive. You're not puzzled about what occurred. You aren't doubting your sanity. And since you did not vanish, neither will the truth. You are totally present here, proving that every effort to delete you failed. And they are no longer contesting the claims. They are fighting proof in human form. You're number 7. Your very existence is proof. Your survival is nothing more than a legal oddity. A uncommon, nearly impossible occurrence in a system that often conceals painful realities under layers of forgetting and denial. They want for you to vanish, to become a distorted reflection of who you once were. But you defied the odds. You are not simply here. You are standing with clarity, recollection, and truth intact. That alone undermines the whole system in many judicial disputes, particularly those involving severe trauma or spiritual warfare. Memory is typically the weakest link, as individuals forget, get confused, or lose trust in their own experiences. The system relies significantly on this weakness to disregard their allegations. But you didn't give in to it. Your mind has been cured. Your memory is keen. You remember every event, every detail, and every injustice with an accuracy that no one can deny. This makes you a legal, as well as an emotional and spiritual, danger. You are not a hazy narrative or a collection of feelings. You are a living, breathing record of the truth. Your presence questions their narrative, their life, and their efforts to alter history. Every time you speak and stand solid, you remove the barriers they created to protect themselves. You don't only have a tale to tell or evidence they want to remove. Your presence is a silent courtroom that speaks louder than any document, witness, or legal argument. They are based on uncertainty, doubt, and the expectation that you will lose yourself along the path. But your clarity shines like a light in that murky system. It serves as a reminder that no matter how many strategies they use, whether legal maneuvering, intimidation, or spiritual assaults, you will remain unshaken. You've been healed. The mind is their Achilles heel. This indicates that your survival is more than just a personal accomplishment. It represents how justice may win even in the most adverse settings. You embody the force of truth, remembrance, and resilience, standing steady against powers that want to quiet and obliterate in every sense. Your entire presence is proof, which they cannot dispute. Number 8. Their karma is heaped and ready for a public speech. This court date does not mark the end of the case. It's the ignition. What's going to happen is more than simply a legal issue. It is a spiritual explosion. This is not a single person's problem. It's a trail of concealed filth that has been brushed under too many carpets for too long. And now the rug is being pulled back, and the stink is ready to fill every room. These folks have never felt secure throughout their lives, and their karma is not going away. It's been waiting for this moment, painstakingly calculated and timed like a fuse preparing to explode. They believe that if they pushed the correct papers, tarnished you sufficiently, and played the victim louder than you could speak, they would walk away unscathed. But the cosmos does not forget this court date. It's no longer about them versus you. It's them against everything. They buried their lives, their manipulations, and their sordid dealings. Everything has been silently piling up, waiting for the precise time when they would have to confront it openly. That moment has a name. This is the situation because they did not anticipate your voice to be the trigger. The voices they attempted to stifle will now reverberate through holes they cannot control. Your truth is not just powerful, it is radioactive. The type of truth that spreads beyond the courts and into families, companies, churches, neighborhood circles, and group chats that vowed never to mention your name. The type of truth that reveals more than justice. It triggers repercussions. This is not simply about passing judgment. It's about to collapse. The most terrible thing for them is knowing that once this door opens, it will not shut cleanly. A single exposure leads to another. Skeletons they locked up are poised to begin hammering on the walls in broad daylight. Reputations established on falsehoods will crumble. All because you talked. You are the one they attempted to eliminate, the one they underestimated. Your speech is the karmic switch that activates the whole system. Once it flips, nothing happens. Nothing returns to its previous state. Number 9. They employed legal documents as if it was voodoo. They didn't just file papers. They engaged in rites disguised as legal proceedings. Every form, clause, and deadline was a thread weaved into a spell designed to snare, confound, and bury you behind a mountain of perplexity. This was not about fairness or truth. It was all about weaponizing bureaucracy, transforming the cold machinery of the law into a battlefield for spiritual combat. They recognized the power buried in legal language, and how words may bind, constrain, and mute. If you're not sure how to fight back, they played the game knowing that most people don't understand this aspect of the law. They relied on your tiredness, stress, and lack of resources. They wondered whether they had drowned you in papers. If they disguised their aims with legal verbiage, they'd win without having to prove anything. This was more than a plan. It was planned assault disguised as a technique. Their weapon was not simply the law itself, but the dread and bewilderment it instills in those it targets. They didn't expect you to be more than simply a passive victim of their plans. However, you have learned the language. You've seen the patterns. You've decrypted the spells they cast using these papers. You have survived a war. The majority of people are unaware of its existence. One battled not only in courts, but also in the unseen spiritual battleground. Behind each signature and filing, your clarity and awareness have become armor. No amount of convoluted paperwork will penetrate. They believe they could control you via various legal means. But you are immune. You don't just react. You destroy every form they employ as a weapon. Only improves your attention. Every move they submit simply strengthens your resolve. They attempted to bind your spirit with legal shackles, but you broke free. And now their so-called witchcraft has nothing more to cast, because you have the actual power, understanding, resilience, and absolute clarity. Number 10. Your delay was not denial. It was a heavenly interruption. The wait, the continual pushing back of dates, and the quiet when you anticipated replies made you feel as if the whole world was against you. It felt like betrayal, as if the universe had forgotten you. But there is a wait. It was not denial. It was not a weakness. It was a heavenly interruption, a reset button you hadn't asked for, but sorely needed. Because if this case had proceeded forward on their time frame, you would not have been prepared. You would not have had the same clarity, power, or plan as you have today. Life's delays often seem like punishment, yet they are frequently the most effective preparation disguised as annoyance. The time you were granted, although it seemed unjust, was truly a blessing. It provided you the opportunity to recover, improve your thinking, and acquire information and allies. It enabled your spirit to connect with the larger purpose behind all of this confusion. The silence they expected to break you was what made you dangerous. Now their schedule, once a weapon designed to manipulate and confound you, has become your stage. The day they anticipated you to be defeated is the day you are completely prepared. They assumed they controlled the timeline, but timelines are only illusions until you decide what to do with them. You transformed that forced break into a power move. So, when the court date approaches, it will be more than simply another day on the calendar. It will be the time when your preparations come together to serve your mission. The instant their expectations collide with your preparation, your divine timing trumps their plans. You didn't just endure the wait. You utilized it to become a force they didn't expect. And now all eyes are on you. Because the tale isn't just continuing. It is about to burst. Your survival reversed the curse they paid for. They invested in evil intents and paid others to cast spells on you, causing your light to flicker and dim. They felt that with enough money and venom, they could silence you permanently, making you ill, broken, and invisible. They assumed your narrative would finish peacefully, hidden under gossip and spiritual sabotage. But you're still alive and breathing. A live retort to the curses they paid for. Their efforts didn't just fail. They bounced back. Unpaid debts continue to accumulate in the universe's unseen ledger. Their curses were covenants of terror. However, your survival destroyed every clause. You were intended to collapse in your sleep, disintegrate under strain, and go without a trace. But you didn't. You defied every expectation, forecast, and strategy they created in the darkness. Your presence now serves as a cosmic bill, demonstrating that their spiritual investment was a complete waste, somewhere beyond their reach. Their spiritual accounts have gone empty, bankrupt. You refused to die. You didn't just withstand their terrible spell. You revealed it. Each day you continue standing. You chip away at the power they believed they had purchased. Your clarity, power, and presence remind us that money cannot purchase victory against a soul determined to live. Their spells were intended to destroy you, but instead they boosted your strength. That's the most painful thing for them. Their investment turned into spiritual debt, and the cosmos is still sending them bills. Your survival is a stronger message than any judicial decision. A reality they can't deny because, no matter how much they paid or how hard they tried, you're still here, holding on, undefeated. And this bankrupts them in ways they'll never comprehend. You now serve as both a legal and spiritual precedent. Your survival is more than simply a personal accomplishment. It's a seismic upheaval with far-reaching consequences beyond your own tale. When you stood up and refused to be erased, you were fighting for more than just yourself. You created the rules for everyone who followed in the tangled mess where the legal system collided with spiritual warfare. You become the template or precedent. Your case is no longer a file sitting on a judge's desk. It's a lighthouse, a reference point that demonstrates how divine might can outweak cold, calculating systems created to break people. You are now an archetype, serving as an example for others to follow as they fight their own fights against weaponized institutions. Lawyers will examine your resilience. Communities will find inspiration in your narrative. And others involved in the same conflict will see your trek as evidence that survival and triumph are possible. You're a live example of how to transform what was intended to destroy into liberty. What you're doing here goes beyond just winning a lawsuit. It creates a space for the holy to meet with the secular in a manner that compels respect and calls for change. The spiritual and legal institutions have long been at conflict, sometimes catching heavenly soldiers in the crossfire. But you're shifting the story. Your battle is setting a new standard, demonstrating that armed systems will not silence the chosen. They won't win. This court date is more than simply a snapshot in time. It is the basis of something much larger. You are not simply surviving. You're establishing a legacy. And when the tale of how you converted the impossible into triumph spreads, many people will be inspired to rise, knowing that their personal efforts are part of a greater, unstoppable movement for justice and truth. The courtroom is no longer their domain. They launched this lawsuit with the intention of using the courtroom as a hunting field where they might scare you into silence and cause your spirit to crumble under pressure. They expected you to come in devastated, afraid, and subservient. However, the plot did not unfold as expected. Instead, you walked in as if you owned the whole room. Your presence transformed the vibe instantaneously. Your testimony is more than simply words. It is prophesy. It holds the weight of truth, which cannot be overlooked or manipulated. The judge will not only hear your voice, they'll sense the unmistakable power behind it. The attorneys preparing to battle will suddenly find that the power they face is not the same as before. The air in the courtroom will become tense and weighty with the realization that the roles have been reversed. This is no longer a game to you. There is a reckoning. The predator, who believed they had complete control, has become the defendant in real time. They are exposed, defenseless, and forced to confront repercussions they never anticipated in a domain they formerly controlled. Your serene assurance shatters their veneer piece by piece. The courtroom. Everyone in attendance will be aware that their stadium has been transformed into your stage. They will see a shift not just in a case, but in power itself. The hunters have become the prey, and the quiet they dreaded has been replaced with your indelible, unstoppable voice. This is your moment. Nothing in that room can halt what is already in motion. A number. They wanted you dead because dead men cannot testify. They wanted you dead because a dead person cannot talk, testify, or disrupt their life. The whole arrangement was not about whether you were guilty or innocent. It was about whether you could be silenced indefinitely. You were a risk to them, not because of anything you did, but because of what you saw, everything you've comprehended. Your knowledge posed an uncontrollable menace. So their objective was to ensure you never had the opportunity to utilize it. But you did not die. You did not escape into the shadows, as they had intended. You managed to get away from them. And, most significantly, you remained awake. Your intellect remained bright, your memories intact, and your soul alive. That's what actually bothers them. The fact that you are still alive, breathing, thinking, and prepared to tell the truth. Because while you're living, your voice is more powerful than any court document or legal tactic. They sought to obliterate you, expecting that once you were gone, the secrets you held would disappear as well. But life has other plans. Your survival indicates that the neatly woven web of falsehoods is in danger of unraveling. Every day you are awake, aware, and loud, they lose control. The notion that you can testify, reveal your truth, and stand in the spotlight scares them more than anything else. You're dangerous because knowledge equals power, and they intended to keep you powerless. But here you are, alive and intact, ready to reveal what they believed was securely kept. Your very presence is the most powerful witness, and it is this that makes you the greatest danger to their story. They expected you to be out of sight and mind before this day came. They expected dread, quiet, and disappearance to be the endgame. However, they failed to see that you are more than just flesh and bone. You are spirit, resilience, and an irresistible force forged from every challenge you've faced. Your survival is more than simply a personal accomplishment. It is a vow that no amount of darkness, trickery, or terror can overthrow the truth. This court date isn't only about legal disputes and decisions. It is about the demonstration of power. They never grasped what you have. You did not merely withstand their strikes. You turned them into fuel. Every delay, curse, and whisper intended to shatter simply strengthened your determination. You've arrived, not broken, but stronger, smarter, and more resilient than ever. The exact technologies they employed as weapons have created the setting for your greatest triumph. And now, as you prepare to tell your truth, you bring with you the weight of justice, clarity, and spiritual power that cannot be ignored. This is more than just a courtroom confrontation. It is a seismic shift. It sends a message to anybody who has been silenced, undervalued, or rejected that surviving is just the beginning, not the conclusion. Your presence here challenges the narrative of what it means to be genuinely triumphant. It demonstrates that those who want to suppress the truth underestimate the strength of a soul that refuses to die. You are living evidence that light can shine through the darkest of darkness. So when the gavel falls, it will not just seal a legal decision. It will convey a fundamental truth. The chosen one is not just surviving. They are rising, speaking up, and altering the system that attempted to destroy them. This court date represents your reckoning, moment, and legacy. And remember that what they believed would be your demise is instead the beginning of a power they never saw coming. If this message spoke to you and you want to remain connected to important tales like these, click the subscribe button. Do not forget to like the video. It helps more individuals understand this fact. Please share your ideas and experiences in the comments below. Your opinion matters here. Also, if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share it with them. We are creating a community that refuses to be silenced. Thank you for taking part in this trip. God bless you.